A Metacritic score of 71 is a pretty respectable score for most first-time game developers, but something tells me that Game Science was expecting a bit more love for their latest entry, Black Myth: Wukong. As a lifelong gamer, I have come to expect most journalistic opinions and views to have heavy undertones, especially when games don't satisfy their political agendas or whatever else. But I was not expecting their complaints to focus on too many bosses, boring level design, and of course story. How could Game Science mess this up? Another mediocre title after such potential. You see, Black Myth: Wukong was easily one of the most anticipated games of 2024, and no opinion, good, bad, or whatever, was going to deter me from playing it day one. I was so committed to playing this game that I bought it digitally, something that never happens for AAA games, but such was my hype. I made a commitment that I was not going to make any videos until I either A, beat this game, or B, I was going to stop playing it because it sucked. Well, one of those two things indeed did happen. Let me just say this. I no longer feel like I can rely on gaming media outlets to properly judge a game's quality. Black Myth: Wukong is my potential Game of the Year candidate, and I have a lot of things to talk about. But first, let me make one thing clear. This game is not a Souls-like. In this day and age, we expect every single action-adventure game to be a derivative of some already established franchise. If it's hard, it must be Souls-like. If it has artificial barriers, it's probably a Metroidvania. If it has lots of flashy moves, hey, maybe it's an action RPG. But what if a game comes out that, despite checking one, two, or maybe all of the boxes, feels a little different? Well, that's how I describe Black Myth: Wukong. If I had to make a comparison, and really this is kind of a stretch, I'd say that this game is quite similar, at least style-wise, to Wulong. And yes, Wulong is an absolute blast to play as well. So let's get one thing out of the way. This game is hard. Plain and simple, you cannot button mash your way to victory. The first chapter alone has two very challenging bosses that will likely make most people quit. If you decide to tough it out though, and learn your enemy's patterns, you will undoubtedly have an experience of a lifetime. The term boss rush is thrown around quite often when describing the game's enemy encounters. I don't remember people complaining about Elden Ring's or even Sekiro's bosses, but yet people have an issue with the bosses in Wukong? Pathetic. And what was all this nonsense about female representation? Did these so-called reviewers even make it past the first two chapters? That statement is simply not true. And yes, I know that some journalists stated that there weren't any females in the first two chapters. But how come they failed to mention all the females in Chapter 4? I personally don't understand how that's relevant to gaming. If you are so passionate about telling your story, make your own damn game. Developers already have a hard enough time with the game design and so many other factors. They do not need to cater to everyone's views. In the end, if you don't like it, don't play it, and certainly don't review it. Anyways, I really appreciated Wukong's simplistic approach to weapons and armor. The boons and banes with each set of gear is easy to comprehend, and you won't need a PhD in mathematics to understand which set of armor or weapons work best against certain types of enemies. Magic is also very effective, it's to the point, and very much an integral part of combat. The very first spell that you learn will likely be your most used spell all the way till the very end, and you will have a hard time unequipping it. I have read so many complaints about the game's exploration, and I don't understand it. The level design in this game, in my opinion, is top-notch. Sure, it's a linear game, but there are many hidden secrets and enemies that make the game a lot more explorable. Maybe people are complaining about the lack of a map, but really, sometimes you just have to step out of those comforts that we are provided and do a little bit of things the old school way, how things used to be. But the best part is that a lot of the secret areas that you find not only give you valuable rewards like armor or weapons, but also touch on the lore of the game that is highlighted through its various chapters. Especially after you complete a main boss in the area, there's some beautiful animated cutscenes that go over the lore in a lot of detail. So, if the story, the soundtrack, levels, the combat, and bosses are great, then what's not? Well, besides the lack of ranged combat, I cannot think of much. Sure, the ice world struggles a bit on the PS5, but I'm fairly certain that they will be patched out eventually. You know the saying, action speaks louder than words, really does apply here. This action game has shut all those critics up. Good, as the game cannot sell in copies. Over 10 million copies sold for a single player, narrative-driven action-adventure title. Meanwhile, Sony, who used to be a pioneer in this genre, are humiliated at their latest live service game that cannot reach 30,000 copies sold. Gamers are tired of non-gaming agendas and overall company BS. Perhaps more companies will start catering to more diverse regions because gaming, in case you didn't know this, is a global phenomenon, and the world does not revolve around the opinions and views of the Western media. The truth here is that a genre that I considered dying has made a fabulous comeback for me. The action combat games like the earlier release of Prince of Persia, Rise of the Ronin, Stellar Blade, and now Black Myth Wukong have made my gaming year amazing. I cannot wait to see what else is in store for us. Perhaps a new From Software game is on the horizon. How about something amazing like Ghost of Tsushima 2 from Sucker Punch? I personally am really excited for Wolverine as well. I really do hope that Black Myth Wukong gets a bigger and better sequel, because if it does, and when it does, I will be there ready to embark on another amazing adventure. Hopefully. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon.